Hey everybody, it's RPG Gilmore here, bringing you a tanking build video for the Oathbound Paladin for 12B, and I will start with the gear. I am currently wearing all primal gear on the left-hand side. You want, you can put either darks or whatever you prefer for your utility slot and for the utilities, so that's just whatever. Um, the primal chest and uh the boots. Oh wait, no, the boots and the bracers are utility as well. So you're just gonna put whatever for utility slots in those. For the chest, I am using Radiance on the defense for the HP and Transcendent Elven Battle uh, to prevent a lot of the stuns and all that type of CC. And then I am using the Titan Steel weapons and a Fade Touched, Transcendent Fade Touch for the main hand weapon. And then Radiance to fill in the other slots for power and HP. For my neck, I am using, if I can get to it, Baphomet's Infernal Talisman, and for the belt, the Demogorgon's girdle for the Demon Lord's set bonus, the Primal Raid Ring, and I will be putting another Primal Raid Ring in place of the Ring of the Hunter. And Lord Roy's shirt, because the 1000 random stat is far more beneficial to us than even just set one. Like there's the Cholton Lord set that gives 600 recovery. I'd prefer the 1000 random stat. And the trousers, which we don't need the lifesteal, but it's got a lot of HP and you can add even more to it. For artifacts, I run the Sigil of the Oathbound Paladin for the main artifact. Shard of Orcus Wand for the set bonus. Tiamat's Orb for the specific stats, but that'll be changing here shortly. It'll probably be either the Sigil of the Great Weapon Fighter or a Manticore's Talon. Probably the Manticore's Talon though. And a Eye of the Giant. For powers, I use Radiant Strike on my L2. Divine Judgment as your primary daily that you use. Aura of Courage is one of your set auras. This gives you quite a bit of extra damage and it benefits your entire team. And these ones I'm going over are the ones you definitely want to put 4/4 in. Bane I do use on bosses in T9G because it helps that DPS and surviving, so it's really beneficial there. So that one's worthwhile to put 4/4 in. Oath Strike, Templar's Wrath. This is for our temporary HP. Binding Oath is just for trash mobs. It's a lot easier to collect them up. Or Protection. This makes it so your group survives a lot of the hits a lot more efficiently. So it just gives them an outlet to survive better. Some people do use Shielding Strike. With this build, it's really not the greatest. You end up with like 6,000 temp HP, so it's not really that good. You may switch Shield of Faith in for your Divine Protector, but it doesn't get used that often. I prefer the Divine Protector, especially for the second boss of T9G. And Circle of Power. This gives you and your entire group more damage resistance, and it also buffs up your damage, so you're actually creating more damage threat. For general feats, since I am human, you get the heroic feats, so you get 3 bonus feats. Vital defense, it gives you 3% defense bonus, which really isn't that beneficial, but every little bit helps, I guess. For feats, I want 5 of 5 in Divine Action. This is so that every time you use your Divine Call, you're generating 5% of your AP. Because of the way one of our capstones works, uh, you can get your Divine Call back pretty much almost constantly. So you can get 15% of your AP in like 3 or 4 seconds just by using that. Weapon Mastery for the crit strike. And I will go over my character stats and the reasoning behind taking some of these feats once I get to the stats. Toughness for the more HP. Raffle Strikes, 1 of 3. 3 of 3 in Exemplar Haste for the faster encounter recharge. 5 of 5 in Steadfast, and 3 of 3 in Force of Will. If you're any other race, I would say maybe some split between Force of Will and Steadfast, or you can just go pure Steadfast. I will take care of the Light Tree first. I want 5 of 5 in Gifts of Light, 5 of 5 in Light Touched. We don't have a ton of healing spells, but we've got healing effects that trigger this, so you generate HP a lot more frequently. And that's a lot more useful than the 10% of our defense from equipment. And I'll show you that why once we go back to the stats. And then finally Aura Gifts, so that you're sharing 25% of your power, your base power with the rest of your group. 5 of 5 in Swift Flash. This is so you can take a hit and then you can immediately move on to another group. Generally this keeps you ahead of even your great weapon fighters. Flash of Light. This is to help your team members' cooldowns reset a little bit quicker. Radiant Champ is for faster movement speed and cooldown reduction as well. Echoes of Light. This is so you get your encounter powers back a little bit quicker. And that's part of why you don't want anything in Purifying Fire, because you're almost constantly using your encounters. 1 of 5 in Beacon of Hope. It's just a little bit of a heal, but it'll trigger the effect of Light Touched, so you get AP back for using your daily power. And then Prism also is treated as a healing effect, so you get that bonus for the AP gain as well, plus it helps your team survive a little bit better. And then Vengeful Judge. This adds a lot of damage and reduces your cooldowns that much quicker. And it can also help you reset your Divine Call, which works very well with Divine Action. For boons, for my guild boon, I use the power bonus. If you're not defense pen capped at 80% for any of the chalk content, you're going to want the armor pen. In the defense, you're going to want HP. And for the utility, you can take XP bonus to get your, if you need more of your power points. But if you're pretty much maxed out on them, you can go with mount speed bonus or whichever you prefer to use. And PvP is just for the item level bonus. You don't really need any of this. From the PvP campaign, just the power and crit strike. From Sharendar, you want 400 power. Excuse me. 400 crit strike. 1600 max HP. And a chance to do 20,000 arcane damage. And Elvish Fury because it buffs up your power and the rest of them are pretty useless. From Dread Ring, uh, depending on how much crit strike you want to go for, you can choose either one of these. The power tends to be a little bit more useful, but if you're very close to like 90% crit, maybe that extra 250 will put you over just enough to get to your 100%. 400 regen because lifesteal is practically useless. 3%, this is basically 3% armor pen. It's a little more useful than the deflect. We don't really want to deflect with this build. Shadow Touch, it's another potential damage over time effect. And then Burning Guidance. What this does is when you trigger off your dailies and you have the Prism and the Burning Guidance, uh, it the heal from the Prism effect triggers the Burning Guidance, so you're generating more threat through damage that way. Icewind Dale, you want 400 AoE resist because you're a tank, you're not going to have combat advantage. 400 stamina gain, 2% crit severity, 2000 power based on how much stamina you have, and then Winter's Bounty because the action point gain is always useful. Underdark, you're going to want 400 power, 400 crit, 1200 regen because combat advantage is useless, and shorter control durations. It's just more useful than the stamina regen. And then Abyssal Strikes. The only demon this is worthwhile to have against anymore is the Orcus in T9G. From Tyranny, you're going to want the HP over the power because you're going to do a lot more damage and survive better with the HP. 400 crit, 400 armor pen, and 400 regen. In the third tree, you don't have to take Dragon's Grip. It just helps with your stun effects, like your Templar's Wrath, or if you're using Binding Light in just regular PvE content where you're soloing, it's a little more useful. But you could either go 3 of 3 in Dragon's Fury if you've got enough crit, and 1 of 3 here like I have. But I'm going to be changing that shortly to 3 of 3 in Dragon's Fury. In Maze Engine, you want incoming healing bonus because lifesteal isn't that useful. Shorter control durations, same reason, no combat advantage. Faster AP gain, that's always useful. And then Baphomet's Might. I know a lot of people take engine inspiration, but really between Prism and having a healer, this really isn't necessary. At least with Baphomet's Might, you can get to that higher crit strike you want for your Templar's Wrath. So you get your temp HP bar full and less Templar's Wrath. Here you want 300 HP, 400 regen, because lifesteal, 400 crit strike, and then Gale Retribution. This gives us more crit and a heal over time effect, which triggers our Prism. Storm King's Thunder, you're going to want the control resistance, 400 stamina gain, 2000 recovery based on how much stamina you're missing, 3200 max HP, and then 3-3 in healing warmth. This is for the same reasons as Burning Guidance. Every time the Prism triggers, you get a heal. This triggers for every person that it heals. So you're doing a lot of bonus damage threat just for tanking anyways. Here you want Aura of Hope for the AP gain, Fiery Frenzy for the crit strike severity, and Soothing Zephyr because recovery is far more important than the lifesteal. And then in the top tier, just apparent power. None of these are really good choices for the paladin tank, and I just think that's the most useful. It's just a bonus damage effect. In Jungle's a Cholt, you want 3 of 3 in Tyrant's Terror, a lot of power and HP. And then Soul Siphon. This will trigger a stack of damaging stack for when you get kills, and a uh, restoration of your health, which counts as a heal, which also works with Prism and your damaging effects through that. For companions, I use the Arinyas for the crit severity. You can also use Cambion Magus if you have that. Those two together is quite a bit of crit severity at Legendary, or even Epic. It's 20% crit severity with both. The Earth Archon, it's pretty much a constant 6% damage buff because our health is always full because we just use our temp HP to protect ourselves. I use the Fire Archon. You can replace this with a bunch of other companions, and I'll go through those after I get through the main ones. The Air Archon, this is the main companion that I use. He gives you a lot of your power bonus stats and even your crit and armor pen. Especially with having 3 offense slots for runestones. And then the Bullet Pup. This is if you're having a hard time surviving, or if your guild doesn't have the HP bonus. This gives you a substantial amount of HP. Like I'm usually at 235. This puts me up another 35k. But I mainly just run with the Air Archon. And then for options for replacing the Fire Archon are the Energon. It gives you more max HP. Once again, if you're having trouble surviving, helps with that. In soloing stuff, I do run the Paranoid Delusion. You get a lot of stuns and disables and prone effects with it, and it gives you a little bit of a bonus to your damage. Or the other one you can use is the Blacksmith. So the larger the hits you take, the more damage he reflects back. Well, has the potential to reflect back. This is only if you have a very slow DPS group, and you're kind of just mitigating that through adding a little bit of damage. But if you have a high DPS group in like T9G, he just doesn't perform the greatest, but he would be another option. If your crit strike is below, like, I would probably say 50%, the Owlbear Cup definitely helps. It adds a decent amount of extra damage based on your power. And another one that you could potentially run is the Con Artist for the debuff effect. It doesn't really add that much for you, but it does help your group out kill a little bit quicker. But I would still prefer having the Air Archon for the main one. For mount powers, if you have a legendary, whatever one you have is more than sufficient. For equip power, you can run whatever stats are lacking for you, whether it be power or AP gain or the crit strike is what I run. And for mount powers, there's Assassin's Covenant. Gives us, mine adds about 1800 power, so it's quite a bit. Artificer's Persuasion. This gives a nice buff to the rest of our group whenever we use our artifact. So it helps them survive that much better. Magistrate's Patient. I only suggest this if, once again, you have over 50% crit strike. Otherwise, you could run either another Assassin's Covenant or um, really that's about it. Cavalry's Warning gives us a buff to all our primary stats that we need of 10% whenever you use a legendary mount power. Same thing, you have to have a legendary. And Gladiator's Guile. This keeps it so that we're ahead of great weapon fighters. That way they're not just getting so far ahead of you and just dying in an instant almost immediately. Alright, for the stats. With our Air Archon, we have 235k HP, 32 armor class, and for stat distribution, I put all into Con and Charisma. Some people use Wisdom if they don't take Force of Will instead of the Charisma. So it really just depends on what race you go with as far as that. And over to the power. Resting power, we're at 37.9. Crit strike, 16,700. Armor pen, 3,700. And the rest of the stats really don't benefit us too much. And I do go with a really low defense. This is for like your Binding Oath. The bigger the hit you take, the faster it will trigger off that damage bonus, and then you can reset it and use it again because of our other powers. And I think that's it. I will go get into a fight real quick with something and show you what the stats are afterwards, after we trigger our companion bonus. Here we go. We got some chompies. Alright. And while that's killing those off, we're at 98k power, almost 26k crit strike, and 8200 armor pen. Which in your offensive stats, it gives you, well, now that it reset, but it'll put you over the 80% resistance cap, and it puts you, I believe, at 92% crit strike chance when everything's triggered. And that's everything. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please like, comment, and subscribe.